Welcome back to EternalRookieCrafts, everyone. And guys, we are at our last video for the Jabber Gachiakuta cosplay build. So like I should insert applause there or something. I want to say thanks to everyone along the way, and then I want to just jump right into it. So here I'm laying out a vest, and this one is strictly to get measurements for the shirt. What I actually did was take apart an old dress shirt that I like the fit of, and that's where you can see the panel to your left that I'm measuring. But I'm using the vest height to give it that crop sort of cut off look that Jabber's jacket has. The idea here is that the vest came down to a better height, I would say sort of midriff, but it'll leave that extra space, and that's okay because I'll be wearing a black Under Armour shirt under this. So I wanted to keep that vest height instead of using the shirt height, because the shirt had all of the, I would say the shirt had all of the right measurements for, I would say like the shoulders, the actual armholes, stuff like that. But it was obviously too long because it was a large dress shirt. So I'm just cropping this dress shirt pattern down to the vest height. So this is another example of me taking apart an old shirt, copying the pattern, and then altering the pattern to make something new. And hopefully you can't tell too much, but yes, I'm getting sick again. It was really cold here, like 14 degrees one night, 24 degrees the next night, and I went out partying, so this is what I get. Okay, notice that I folded the shirt in on itself in the middle, and that's so I can get the exact shape at the bottom. Those curves at the bottom are a really important part of the pattern when it comes to this dress shirt shape. So I wanted to make sure that I still captured that even though I was shortening it. And you can kind of see right here, I'm just tracing it to make sure that I attach the line properly. And when I cut it out, I'll still have the same shape, just a short version of it. So here I'm cutting it out, so that way we'll be able to take a look at what the shape looks like when it's not just traced here. And as you can see, I'm using the shears that I've been using since the beginning of this series. And I still recommend that you get the, I don't know what they're called yet, but that's like a fabric cutter where you just press down. And everyone makes it look so much easier than using shears, because shears, they can slide around and you might miss your angles and stuff like that. So I recommend, if you have the money, just go ahead and get that. I'll probably have it in my next series because, wow, using the shears is really nice compared to using different fabric scissors, but it looks a lot easier if I just use that other cutter. Okay, so here's a quick look of what I used for the pattern, so to cut out from the shirt, and then what I just now traced and cut out over here, the shortened crop. So when I lay this on the table, you'll be able to see sort of the size difference here. And you can see that the original shirt had buttons down the middle. I chose to just not do that and to make it all one solid pullover. I know. Jabber's shirt actually does have clasps in the front, and it isn't just a pullover. But as a beginner, this was just easier for me. Like, I only understand shirts as like a normal pullover shirt so far. I gotta figure out how to do that. Okay, so it turned out that the shirt was still a little longer than I wanted. So right here, I'm just marking it to make sure that I keep it straight. Then I'm actually going to shorten the shirt again. So you'll see me fold the middle once again as I'm tracing out this new pattern on my good fabric here. Also, keep in mind, especially for those of you that may be new here to the channel, we always do our first pattern on an old bed sheet or some sort of fabric that you don't want to make the actual item out of. So the original one that was a little too big, that was on an old bed sheet, so that's fine. So now I'm resizing it on our good fabric that I'll actually use for the shirt. And if you're skeptical about using a dress shirt for this pattern, since it's more like a jacket in the actual anime, I would say this is only better for me because the dress shirt basically came in panels. So I could take each panel apart with a seam ripper and then trace each part and upsize it how I need it to, rather than having to figure out where to cut a shirt or a jacket. That dress shirt really just offers itself up with those panels already out. So this shape you see here is the back already. The shape you saw before is the front already. And all I had to do is trace it and then turn it into the size I needed, or make it a crop like I did here. Okay, so now I have it all cut out. I want to show a quick glimpse of what I'm going for. It'll be the regular shirt panel and then the nice purple on top. And the idea is that the plain shirt will be a size larger than the purple panel. If you've been through the playlist, then what I'm doing here should look familiar. I'm folding the edges over to add extra, I would say, fortitude once I start sewing each part together. By flipping that panel and then doing a top stitch over it, it just makes it so that it's easier for me to sew it to the next panel. And when I do so, it'll have more hold. Another thing that I do is the first 3 or 4 stitches, I'll stitch forward, then backwards, then stitch forward to the other side, come back, and then stitch through. And that's just a common technique that I learned watching other people's videos. If I had a serger, maybe I wouldn't have to, so I can get that overlock stitch. But I do not have a serger, so I also cannot do an overlock stitch. Right here. Back, forward, all the way through. If you guys want me to do a quick video on how I use this exact sewing machine, then I can do that too. Just let me know in the comments. Also, you may have noticed that under the sewing machine, I have a purple piece of fabric. That's actually the chest piece, or even the back piece. I left that part out, but it was the same tracing method and then cutting method. And as I said, you just make sure that it's smaller than the chest panel and the back panel, because you'll be transfixing it on top of it, and you'll want that extra. I think for me, it came out to be maybe an extra inch all around from every seam, and I sewed about a 1/4 inch seam to attach each panel. So basically you just want to leave enough space to attach each panel, but I like to also have a little bit of the white fabric on the outside. So here I'm doing the same thing with the nice stretchy purple fabric. I'm folding the edges and sewing them, and that helped me a lot because this fabric is so hard to work with for a newbie, but we got through it, y'all. We got through it. Now, as you can see here, I'm laying on top just to make sure that it's smaller. Want the extra white hanging at the bottom. The issue here, as you can see, is the purple comes to the edge, which is not what I wanted. I'm not sure how I mismeasured that, but that's what happened. So here's another image of just the back. It was the same issue. The purple comes to the edge. It completely encompasses the white. So you see me folding it. I'm trying to find a good angle to cut it or just fold it over itself. And I was afraid to cut it and suddenly it's too small somehow. So what I did was fold it over itself, and I'm going to stitch them together that way. That's another view. They shouldn't be the same size, but they are. So I had to fix that. Another thing I mentioned that may help some of us beginners are using the fabric clips instead of using these fabric pins that I have here. These pins do a good job of holding in place. They do a great job of keeping you from going over your seam line when you're sewing or stitching. But the issue is that they're a little bit more clumsy to work with. It is easier to just snap something onto them sometimes. So I recommend getting both if you can. Here we are. So now I have it. The purple is smaller than the white. It's stitched on top, and it'll just be enough so that I can add the seams to each panel. So when I'm going to sew this front piece to the back piece and the shoulders, it'll all have a little extra white for me to stitch together on the inside. And here I'm doing the same thing for the opposite panel. Take note of all the extra white space I leave at the bottom. Okay, so here we have the front. As I mentioned earlier, Jabber actually has a shirt that can open and it has clasps in the front, but I just made it all one piece. So here I'm going to try to make the illusion of making it so that it can open in the front, but I won't really do it. It was just easier for me to make a full-on panel than to learn how to make that front piece into two panels on my first try. I'm actually using my cutting mat to find the center, and then I added an inch in the middle, and I'm going to run 2 rows, or I guess 2 columns of the pins down, so there's a better angle. You see I'm running the pins straight down the shirt. I'm trying to make the line as straight as possible so that it'll be right down the middle. There we go. That's pretty good. Now I'm lining it up right down the middle is how I'm trying to stitch this. And I'm just doing a top stitch. It'll just give it, I guess, kind of the illusion of a divide in the middle. Like if you had a jacket that you could open. And then later, I'll add stuff that looks like clasps. Very carefully down the middle. And try to ignore that I sound so stuffy. I'm doing my best here. I'm doing my best. There we go. Looks better already. We gotta take those pins out though. If you came here from my hoodie video where I made Jabber's hood, here's another scene of how I attached the hood to the actual shirt. So now you got a chance to see the shirt get made, and I put the front panel and back panels together, and now I'm attaching the hood. I'll also have to attach the sleeves. So if you've already seen how I made the cape sleeves for Jabber, that was one where I had to make my own pattern, which I'm super proud of myself for doing that as a beginner. They came out awesome. So I'm also attaching those to the shirt. And the main thing you have to remember is you have to have your shirt turned inside out, tuck the hood inside the shirt, and then you can stitch those together. Make sure you pin them so you'll have the seam you want, and you can stitch around that hole. Always remember, right side to right side. So when you turn both inside out and tuck one another, that means the right sides will be touching. The sides that everyone's going to see when it's completely done, they will be touching. And you'll be looking at the inside of the shirt. There we go. It's a crop top hoodie now. So now's a good time to take a look at what it looks like when I'm wearing it. You see how short it is? You see how there's no sleeves, but the hood is on. You see the shoulder panels that I added. If you take a look at any dress shirt, once again, you'll see that it's in panels, and the shoulder is one of the panels. So that comes in separate. It's the front, the back, the shoulders, the arms, and then the collar. We are almost finished. So here, once again, turn the sleeve inside out. Make sure the shirt is inside out. Tuck the sleeve. You just saw that. I tucked the sleeve inside the shirt. And now I'll be sewing around those corners or around this circular armhole. Make sure to keep your seam allowance. Mine is 1/4. And once you attach that, that will give you a shirt with sleeves now. Now look at all that hard work. Pinning the sleeves, keeping my seam allowance, stitching forward and back to make sure that I have a good grip on the actual string and it doesn't come out, the thread doesn't come out. Pretty cool, right? It just looks so locked in. Like I know exactly what I'm doing. Nothing could ever go wrong. Look at that boy. Rookie who? We pros now. The extra seam allowance is the shoulder, and it's okay that it's longer. It'll be tucked on the inside. Last stitch, baby. We're perfect. Psych! I forgot the cardinal rule. Flip the sleeve before you tuck it inside the shirt. So now I have my seam on the outside, and that's a no-go. So I actually had to undo the seam with the ripper and redo that part all over again. Now here, I'm actually using my crochet needle and my crochet, I guess, yarn or thread. I'm new to crocheting too, so I don't call everything the stuff you're supposed to call it. And I'm using that to make, I would say, the semblance of clasps in the front. And that'll give it that look of it's a jacket. This is like maybe the night before the convention, and I was going to a Gachiakuta meetup as the only Jabber there. So I was like, I just got to make this thing look really cool. I can't do everything perfectly. It's my first time, and I definitely can't go out and buy more stuff. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. So YOLO'd it. I think it came out pretty cool, but this was not even something I planned on doing in the beginning. I'm literally just stabbing it with the needle and looping it through like a shoestrings. But hey, trust the process. Trust the process. Okay, so this is actually the last part of the video. So I want to just start saying thanks right now. I have so many new people that subscribe just to see this build. I hope you guys stick around to see the next series. There will never not be a time that I'm creating another cosplay or just learning more techniques for sewing. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I have a lot more to come. I have Pyramid Head, I have my Asta builds, and I have to upgrade my Jabber, so stick around. Thanks everybody.